So good morning, everyone. If you're joining us from North America or Latin America for that matter, or good afternoon if you're in Europe, and even good evening if you're staying up to join us from Asia Pacific. Welcome to today's webinar, which is titled Know Your Risk Always, How to Trust Your Fraud Prevention Data to Maximize Conversions. My name is Alan Moss and I'm responsible for marketing with Mira Systems. We're a leading supplier of mobile acceptance solutions, and certainly on our side, seeing a lot of demand right now for contactless and NFC payment technology, as cashless payments continue to increase in these times of coronavirus. We're providing solutions in-store, outside, at self-service kiosks, or even curbside with click and collect. Now, today's webinar is organized by Merchant Payments Ecosystem. You may remember the online event we held a couple of months back, bringing together around 1,800 professionals from the retail and payments industries. And we're now starting to look forward to next February's event, which will be online. So today we have around 220 people registered. We've received some questions and we'll be getting onto those towards the end of the session as part of a Q&A. And in terms of really setting the scene for today's discussion, what I think we've seen this year, and it was confirmed at the end of last month, is strong interest or strong increase in card transactions. Both MasterCard and Visa reported their Q3 results with figures, total volume up in the case of MasterCard by 1%, 4% in the case of Visa. Not very impressive figures, perhaps you would think, but to me it was interesting to see that debit volume, which is what people are using fundamentally for everyday payments, was up 20% year on year. It was perhaps no surprise to see that cross-border volumes were down over 30% in the case of both networks, with less international travel taking place. But also, for me, it was interesting to see that contactless transactions are now up to over 40% of total card present transaction volume across both networks. But of course, this year with coronavirus, a lot of the focus has been on card not present and the strong growth of global e-commerce. And I've been watching some of the figures that come out from ACI Worldwide Research as part of their international tracker. And certainly the latest round from September, we're showing 21% year-on-year growth, which is quite impressive. And in fact, ACI sees that accelerating to around a 27% increase in global e-commerce transactions over the holiday period to the end of this year. They also see a 40% boost in click and collect, or BOPIS, as some people call it, buy online, pick up in store. And that's perhaps reflected in the increasing use of mobile devices or mobile checkout inside physical stores. Now, this swing towards digital has probably allowed merchants to expand their market reach. But I think what we all know is where the sales increase, so does the fraud. And coming back to ACI, they've seen that the average fraud purchase value increased by $9 in September of this year versus the same month in 2019, with actually a 0.4% increase in the transactional value of fraud attempts during the same month. Additionally, data from August showed a 12% increase in non-fraud chargebacks compared with the same period of last year. So clearly, both fraud and also non-fraud chargebacks are up strongly. So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce today's sponsor, which is 4Stop, a company dedicated to creating a one-stop solution for enterprise-level KYC, compliance, and anti-fraud to really help businesses grow with confidence. I'd like to introduce our speakers. So we start with Paul McManus, who's Vice President of Merchant and Payments, who joined 4Stop earlier this year and has around 20 years of experience in top software companies, specializing in data-driven solutions for payments, fraud, and identity validation. We also have Brian Daly, who's Head of Product Implementation and Innovation, a technologist at heart with 17 years commercial IT experience, 13 years in electronic payments, and providing support and consulting services. We then also have Christian Wheeler, who's Vice President of Merchant Underwriting and brings 15 years in the financial sector, specializing in acquiring and issuing within Forstop at an international level. So at this point, and without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Paul to get the session started and to take us through the deck which Forstop has ready. Paul.
Thank you, Alan, for your introduction, and welcome to everybody joining us for today's Know Your Risk webinar, where we will look at the power of data orchestration hubs, and in doing so provide you with a guide to increasing your data confidence, to improve your online engagement, increasing your customer retention and profitability, and future-proofing your business against risk. We're going to do this in 3 sections. The first is looking at the power of a single API and why data orchestration hubs have become leaders in risk mitigation innovation. The second is looking at cutting the complexity of this, how to reduce your costs, time, the friction and complexity of onboarding your customers whilst remaining compliant. And thirdly, looking at the value of multi-level verifications and how these can easily mitigate false positives, friendly fraud, account takeover, chargebacks, and the benefits of aggregated risk score can bring to building more trust in your data. So next slide, please. So for our first segment, I will explore the power of a single API and how through this orchestration hubs are helping to solve the complexity of drawing value from so many disparate data sources. But before we do this, I'd like to take a few moments to highlight some key industry trends that are affecting the online payment landscape and the opportunities and risks that they present. So next slide, please. The online landscape continues to expand and present us with fresh opportunities and growth, as always in digital. Overall, we can see the growth factors of 2, 3, 4, and 5 times in the last 5 to 6 years. Some key statistics are that non-cash transactions in retail commerce have more than doubled, and e-wallets now represent 49% of e-com spend. We're seeing even bigger growth in sectors such as iGaming and crypto, and mobile commerce is set to account for $2 of every $3 spent online by next year. COVID's also had a really big impact on the online landscape and also on consumers' buying habits. And I think a couple of stats that really stand out to me in this slide are that global online sales went up by 71% year over year for the second quarter. And in the EU, 60% of consumers will continue shopping online at the same level as they would as they would have done after the outbreak. So next slide, please. And as is always the case with our online worlds, as the opportunity increases, so does the risk of businesses being impacted by fraud. I think the stats here show and illustrate the size of the challenge we face. There's some pretty scary statistics in there. Add to this the impact of COVID and the challenge increases yet again. In its May 2020 report titled COVID-19, FATF identified criminals using ways to buy customer due diligence as a key risk to businesses. And again, these stats show a clear pattern of risk growth post-COVID. I'll just give you a moment to take in some of those stats. Okay, the next slide, please. So following on from these stats and the challenges and opportunities that they present, what options do we have to address them? Well, we believe that orchestration hubs give us the advantage to address all of these challenges via a single API. In doing so, we're drawing together all the resource, solutions, and data needed to manage your regulatory requirements, your fraud risk, and onboard your customers with zero friction. So to talk you through this, my colleague Brian Daly I'll hand over to him, and he'll now explain to you more about orchestration hubs and what they are and how they're going to help your business. Over to you, Brian.
Everybody, next slide, please. So what are orchestration hubs? Well, they come in 2 types. I think we have a data orchestration hub, which is all about the automation of data-driven processes from end to end, including the preparing the data, making decisions based on that data, and taking actions based on those decisions. It's a process that often gets spread across multiple different departments, systems, and types of data. Orchestration hubs, on the other hand, are at the heart of the KYC solution that succeeds in balancing the security and the user experience with the reduced operational costs and resources of a business. Think of them as a central hub which connects businesses on one end to consumers, excuse me, the customers of the KYC solutions, and a myriad of data sources and databases at the other end. You can use these to cross-reference the necessary identity verifications, data, and all the other checks all through one API. Next slide, please. So unlike data aggregation services, data orchestration hubs automate the configuration, aggregation, and coordination on management of technology endpoints, data points, anti-fraud tools, monitoring risk, and reporting. And as you see from the slide here, that we have kind of a breakdown between what we consider to be a standard and a more advanced hub. So you've got your API, you've got your data hub, or your marketplace of data as such, where you should be able to easily access and add new data to your systems, to your workflows. But having access to the data is great, but you need to enable them at different points in your workflow. So lots of data aggregation hubs have different endpoints or different touch points. For example, at point of registration, at point of first payout, when you hit a certain threshold of payments, for example, or when you're making withdrawal. This is all really good if you have all this data, but you also need to be able to cascade between the data. So in a more advanced data source hubs, data hubs have cascading logic, be able to check, for example, a device ID first, and then cascade out to check someone's email address, or if they're on a compliance watch list. That reduces cost in the first instance because you can remove people from the onboarding process much sooner, but it also allows you to create the progressive onboarding experience we've all become used to, lower friction and faster onboarding, protecting your onboarding of the consumer. You should be able to define these experiences by region, and as I said, across multiple touch points and throughout your onboarding experience. Access to data is great, but you also need to be able to interrogate the data. You need to be able to understand what it means. So you need to have anti-fraud rules and engines and risk thresholds and be able to score the data so that you can understand what this data means for your business. Does it meet your compliance requirements? And does it reduce the risk you're bringing into your business by operating online? Advanced data services, data orchestrating services will have smart anti-fraud engines, but Forstop, for example, has a what-if logic, which allows you to be able to predict what will happen to your onboarding experience or your payment experience by looking at what if I add this rule? What if I add this data source? What if I add this verification to my processes? What impact will it have on my onboarding rates? You can also cascade the rules around the onboarding process. So I can check to see if someone's of age initially. And if they turn out to be of age, I can then go out and check to see if they're on a watch list. This enables far more dynamic decision making. It's not a one size fits all. You can really develop real workflows and real dynamic decisions based on how you want to onboard a customer in one jurisdiction or another, or based on the different data points that they've presented. Access to data and the fraud tools is great, but you also need to be able to monitor what's going on in the system. So data hubs have access to real-time intelligence, real-time alerting, management tools to be able to manage and review each of the cases. But advanced services will enable things like ongoing monitoring. Has this person's identity changed? Have the parameters of their identity changed? Have they been added to a watch list? Has their passport expired and do they need a recheck, for example? Also, you should be able to do monitoring market simulations. So what if you want to go into a new region? You should be able to work with your data aggregation hub and provider to be able to say, I need to move into this market, I'm considering doing this. Can we get some information and data and analyze what this market might mean to you as a business? And Forstop can provide that through its data science services. Again, from an operational point of view, to this point, it's all been really good and really focused on the actual compliance and the risk and everything, but you need to be able to report on all of this stuff. So you need to be able to report to the regulators, you need to be able to report to your own management, and you need to be able to provide compliance reports to anybody that asks. So data orchestration hubs will have storage areas, they'll have queues and repositories of data, but you need to be able to provide business profiling reports, customer profiling reports, payment history reports, and any or all other reports you might need to report to management or auditors, like I said. Next slide, please. And I think I'm going to hand over to Paul on this slide to discuss cutting the complexity using a data orchestration hub.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, so now we're going to take a look at cutting the complexity and how we can help to reduce the cost, time, and the friction and complexity in onboarding customers. So we're operating globally and working with so much data, this is not an insignificant challenge. But before we walk you through that and give you some examples, I just want to move on to the next slide, please, and talk about some of the reasons why, key reasons why businesses need data hubs. We feel there are three key drivers here, and they are in reducing resources, reducing costs, and improving time. So with a data orchestration hub, you're looking at thousands of data sources or data endpoints that are accessible in real time and with a centralized view of risk. So the orchestration hub allows you to reduce this resource needed to manage so much data from so many suppliers right across the business. So in the case of a resource reduction, you've got in the IT department, we have less resource needed to manage integrations and less development work associated with that. In operations, you have less resource needed to manage the data suppliers. And within data management, because you have a centralized and automated data repository, all interrogated via a single transaction layer, you have less resource needed to manage the data. And with risk analysis, you need less resource to manage the risk analysis because you're utilizing real-time analytics. You're reducing your costs because you reduce the number of data call fees that you get by being able to apply real-time logic to the way in which you call the data. You're reducing your costs around managing multiple contracts because you'll be using one contract through the single API. Again, your integration costs go down because it's a single API, and your non-compliant fines will go down through the good use of an orchestration hub. In terms of improving time, you're reducing the time it takes you to enter new markets because you're able to access a wider range of data and apply it in the most relevant fashion or most relevant way to each jurisdiction that you're moving into. Your onboarding time reduces with your customers, again, through improved process. Your reaction to fraud is significantly faster, and your overall management of your compliance process should reduce also. So next slide, please. So a well-applied orchestration hub will also significantly improve your process. And when you integrate a single API, you'll be able to fully customize your risk mitigation and obtain your best data output to help you enter a new market with ease and confidence. And you can do all this by applying a number of different processes. And the first would be applying a range of pre-screening solutions, which would help you to identify where the customers are coming from, for example, and then apply appropriate risks to them. So you're weeding out the bad customers before you even get to the next stage, which is typically the more expensive stage of utilizing data sources to validate the individual's identity. So again, in using an orchestration hub, your process is improved because you're able to access a wide range of data sources. There's no single data provider anywhere that can provide full global coverage and match the specific requirements of each market. But with a data orchestration hub, you're able to do that, picking and choosing the data source that best suits each individual market. And then applying cascading verification logic to all of this ensures you get the optimum data performance from the process as well. So for both cost effectiveness and customer onboarding, you have the ability to mix and match the data to the parts of the process giving optimum onboarding and optimum cost optimization and customer onboarding. So next slide, please. And then following all this, you're able to significantly reduce the friction right across the business. So from using on-demand data points, you can easily select a data point, again, that's relevant to the jurisdiction you're working in. At the click of a button, you can use cascading what-if rules logic to reduce the friction around making decisions about whether you should apply a certain rule set, or you could just apply a certain data point by testing them in a sandbox. So you're understanding exactly what's happening with that data and what the impact would be of making those changes. Real-time monitoring on all touch points means that you've got the ability to monitor every transaction as it moves right across your business, giving you far better understanding. And with AI and machine learning tech, you're able to build far greater rule sets and understand what your customers are likely to do, predicting fraud patterns and behavior. Again, with automated verifications, you're reducing the friction because there's less manual intervention, giving you greater dynamic decision making and the ability to make faster and better decisions about how you utilize your data. This in turn gives you automated compliance. So your whole compliance process, as we mentioned before, the friction around that is reduced, and the burden, time and cost associated with doing that is also significantly reduced. And then with the appliance of data science, the review of all of this gives you appropriate ability to be able to manage risk and predict it going forward. So next slide, please. Okay, at this stage, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Christian Wheeler, and he's going to talk you through a lot more detail our KYC and KYB processes.
Thanks, Paul. Good afternoon, everyone. So firstly, thanks to both my colleagues and Alan for giving us some thought leadership and some insight to the industry. I'm now going to turn that round and discuss Four-Stop solution and our capabilities. So around the end of last year, Four-Stop launched our automated end-to-end KYB solution with the baseline really and the aim of eliminating the complexity of the onboarding process, whilst at the same time adhering to the multiple and global compliance requirements. So we really wanted to focus on two key areas, workflows and the verifications around that. So we started with what we thought would be the 5 key areas, as you can see from the slide: business identity information, compliance and the documents behind that, credit, so the health of the business and the individuals behind that business, web analysis, so does the company or the merchant have an online presence, and can we build a picture of that? And lastly in the process, the verifications of the UBOs, so the KYC process. Next slide, please. So as you can see from the slide, we wanted to do this as simply as possible, and we come up with a 2-step process. Our aim being really for anyone in an organisation to be able to run this product. So firstly, on the left-hand side, as you can see, it's very much a data input process, business name, business address, etc. Once found, you can refine your process and refine your search. Once you have your company, you can simply pick the services you want to check. Very much a tick box exercise. It will show you the costs, and then it will deliver those reports. Some will be in real time, others there'll be a small wait, but you will be notified when each report is complete. Next slide, please. So as you can see from the slide, giving you an overview, once the checks have been run, it will create a business case file. This will give you all the results and the reports in one place. It'll allow you to drill down on those results and the feedback given. Each data parameter will give you specific alerts. The same data parameters will also portion a risk score. As you can see from the top of the screen, it has case management capabilities. It will show you the process from start to finish. It will allow obviously different internal groups to view the progress and work on the progress. Down the right hand side, as you can see, it will allow you to download the reports in a PDF format. Obviously, this will make sharing internally and with external partners very easy, and also it will give more importantly, it will give you that traceability. Next slide, please. So I think, as both my colleagues have touched on, the key to the process is to automate in not only an enhanced but as a simple way as possible. But we really want to do this in a customized and specific way. And we want to do that because we want to suit each business need and the risk appetites behind that need. We will create the customized workflows to suit each business and obviously the compliance needs behind that. And as Paul touched on, whether that be internal compliance needs, those of the region or the country. From my experience, most onboarding struggles centre around two key areas, as you see from the bottom of the page: time to onboard and onboarding costs. There are some verticals within the industry still taking 26 days to board a merchant or board a business. I'm sure these are all very much a manual process, and that's probably going to ultimately end up with you losing that business. There are also certain verticals, certain parts of the world where a merchant must be boarded within an hour, again, probably at the risk of losing that merchant. Now, probably an hour to some seems a bit extreme. We're probably talking, West Coast of America, some of the higher risk verticals of our industry. But what we're looking to do at Forstop is very much turn those days to hours to minutes where possible. So if we move on to onboarding costs, as it shows, there are some scary costs still floating around in the industry, especially if your process is manual. Obviously, you've got to factor in the staff costs. That's on top of any data calls, data costs, investigations, etc. And again, our main aim is really to try and bring that down to cents and single figure euros and pounds. So partly we're going to do that by offering a number of what I'd call pre-screening tools. Again, that will give you the option for these calls costing cents over euros and pounds. What I mean by pre-screening tools, dual IP checks, email verification checks, device ID checks. Again, from my experience in the industry, it's very much a cheap and simple way to see a red flag very early on in the underwriting process. And ultimately, that's going to save you time. It's going to save you money. It's going to stop fraudulent characters entering your process. It's going to stop bust out merchants. But really, bottom line, it's going to allow you to concentrate on the merchants that are ultimately going to transact and obviously generate income for your business. This all brings it back to cutting costs, maximising your time, maximising your resources, and as I say, as we keep getting back to cutting the complexity of this process. I think Alan touched on at the start of the presentation, obviously recent problems, recent times, COVID, and what I've spoke about, I think, is even more prevalent in current times. Obviously, e-com's going up and up every day. You might be working with less staff. You're probably going to be working with a disjointed workforce. What I mean by that, you've probably got some people in the office and others working at home spread across the globe. To me, that means the silos within your businesses are growing. Next slide, please. So moving on from KYB, I'm going to talk now about KYC. I think Alan again touched on at the start of the presentation. The beauty of Forstop is everything under one roof. It again allows you to concentrate on time, resources, and cost. It's the same platform. It's the same system. It's going to allow you to set specific rules and specific workflows to each merchant. It might be each country, region, drill down to MCC codes, whichever your business requires. Difference being KYC to KYB, most KYC checks are real time. We're talking nanoseconds. Again, we'll offer the full end-to-end process. Again, that can start with pre-screening through to compliance checks, IDV checks, OCR verification, anything all the way down to adverse media checks. Can go as light or as deep in the process as you wish. And again, bring it back to being customizable and bring it to that individual applicant's needs. Very simple example from our point of view is our crypto and FX clients, for instance, have far different workflows and approaches and requirements to, say, our acquiring bank partners. Next slide, please. So centering on that customized approach, again, let's make it business specific. When we make it region or country specific, we'll configure it to meet your business needs. But at the same time, we want to ensure that you get the best data outputs. And again, what do I mean by that? I'm sure there's plenty of industry people on the call. I'm sure you're aware there's certain countries where the data quality is far better than others. But really, the ability to manage ongoing compliance, you want to be able to do that regardless of the region. You want to do it consistently. You want to do it in a measured way. Using our platform, you can ultimately use the large catalogue of integrated data sources. It's going to manage those complexities. It's going to manage those complexities across the different countries, and it's going to allow you to have alternative data options where the data quality might be poor. Next slide, please. So as you can see from the slide, as with KYB, we're all about trying to create and enrich customer profile, customer picture. That profile can encompass general layers, can give you multiple checks. I think both my colleagues touched on it, allow you to onboard quickly, very much again all around in an automated way, in a consistent way. KYC especially is going to allow you to enter markets very quickly with really low cost points if needed. Obviously, it'll allow you to grow in a manageable way, and this is all going to be from the same platform, same technology, and the same API. Now, you might use 5 products at the start. As the journey goes on, you might use 20 products. But once that integration is done, there are no modifications needed. So before I hand it back to Brian, I just want to give a short summary, I think, around our ethos and what we've created. I think at Forstock, we've very much created a data and technical solution. As I say, it's really going to enhance your process and your cost efficiencies. I keep talking about the silos within your business, but you should try and rid your business of some of those silos. Maybe it's across the KYC or the KYB departments. There's obviously a lot of increased regulatory pressures, and using the tool is going to give you that traceability. It's going to give you the higher data quality, and it's going to give you data choices, whether that be locally or globally. But lastly, from my experience in the industry, most see this approach or an underwriting process as very much a burden, and we want to bring our system and our approach very much to be a value add. And I think using our system will allow that within your organisation. So I'm going to hand it back to Brian, and Brian's going to continue our presentation, starting by talking about multi-level verifications.
Thank you, Christian. So all the aggregation, data capture, automation is all really, really powerful stuff. And as demonstrated by Christian and Paul, that it really adds efficiencies and cost saving and reduction of resources to your business. But doing business online is risky. So, there's no point in having all this data and expanding your business into a new target market or expanding where your business is focused without being able to protect yourselves, your business, and your customers. So Forstock at its core is focused on this protection of your business and your customers. I mean, at the genesis of the company, we're a transaction monitoring and an anti-fraud platform. So with everything, we take a multi-level verification approach to everything we do. So this allows us to mitigate false positives, account takeovers for any frauds, reduce the impact of chargebacks, and give you access to multiple scoring methodologies, which we can obtain from our data source partners, AI-powered, ML-powered, their trusted data, their own methodologies, which we can all aggregate together. So if we go on to the next slide, please, we can show you what we mean by this. Next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. So we take a 3-tiered approach to risk methodology. And if you can see on the slide here that we have a couple of our different data sources examples. When you activate a number of data sources behind one of our verification services like IDV Global here, you can obtain the aggregated risk scores from those providers. And by obtaining those aggregated risk scores, running a rules engine against this, scoring all of this data, you can take these risk scores and the scores you've assigned to each of the rules that you've triggered or each of the data points that you're monitoring and create an overarching 4-step score. So you get a really strong scoring methodology. And this stands for all of the data services we offer. So like email verification, device ID, phone advanced ID, and geo-checking services. Next slide, please. So by combining the overarching 4-stop score and the aggregated scoring with confidence scores, you can really start to trust your information. So the more times you segment, more segments of data that you verify across, the more verification points you do it, so multiple data sources. You can start to obtain a confidence score in the results by cross-referencing these results across multiple sources. So for example, on the screen you see that the country code United Kingdom has been verified in two different sources. You can see my nationality has been verified in several sources, and even has been verified manually also. And you can see that across all the different parameters. Next slide, please. Combining all of this data helps to deliver trust, allowing you to optimize the risk decisioning and reaction times you have in your systems. So if you trust in your risk score, you can run through your queues faster. You can improve your reaction times to fraud at registration and at the payment levels. And you can easily flag customer behaviors that are outside of their normal behavior. So combining risk scoring with the huge access to data and understanding you can get on an individual from their KYC processes, you can really start to understand how a person behaves and how something might be different from the usual. Next slide, please. All of this lends itself to improving the onboarding and the acceptance rates of your business, all along with the automation and the acceleration of the growth of your business, which is really what counts. Accelerating and growing your business is what counts. But we can do this at the same time as decreasing false positives, mitigating account takeovers, decreasing friendly fraud, and reducing the impact of chargebacks on your business. Next slide, please. So when you combine the when you can confidently verify a business or the people through good data and good and qualifiable data, you can deploy a world-leading and cybercrime-beating fraud defense. Here we've got two demonstratable statistics that when someone deploys the 4-stop anti-fraud, KYC, and orchestration tools, we have proven a 66% reduction in chargebacks after the first 2 months, an 81% increase in approval authorizations for companies that have deployed our KYC and smart anti-fraud technology. Now, Paul will talk you through how enriching the data can accelerate your business. So back over to Paul for this piece.
Thank you, Brian. Next slide, please. Yeah, so finally, I'd like to round off our presentation by highlighting the added value gained from the enriched data what will be derived by having access to so many different data sources, which in turn will provide you with thousands of data responses, helping you to make better and more qualified decisions the more able you are to grow your business. So using the data obtained from your KYC process, you're going to be able to run full data simulations, create more meaningful market profiles, and optimize your rule configurations. This is going to reduce your false positives and optimize your onboarding. You're going to optimize your automation process as well, so to act with far greater confidence. And then I think a couple of key benefits of all of this, amongst others, are the ability to enter new markets more quickly and with lower risk, as we've mentioned all the way through the presentation, and ensuring you've got the best fraud defense in place to combat the ever-growing threat of fraud by bringing everything together in one place. So next slide, please. So lastly, importantly, as well as the benefits just described, you can also leverage this data for both revenue and customer retention. So the more you can verify about a customer or a business, the richer your profiling becomes, and this in turn enables you to tailor the experience to the customer for both greater revenue retention, less churn, and increased lifetime value, which is something all of our sales and marketing departments are always happy to see. So driving value right across the organisation. And the stats below illustrate how valuable and important the personalisation experience is becoming to our customers. So 91% of our customers say they're more likely to spend with brands that provide them offers that are relevant to them. 83% of customers are willing to share data to create a more personal experience, and 90% of customers are willing to share personal behavioral data with companies to get a cheaper and easier experience. So again, just illustrating the value of the data that you're getting and being able to action on. So that brings us to a close. So I'd like to thank you all for your time and attention, and we're going to move on to some questions.
Great, thank you very much for that, Paul. Thank you, Christian, and thank you, Brian, as well. Very nice overview on the value of data orchestration hubs, as well as multi-level verification. Now, as you were speaking, I was kind of thinking about this more from a customer perspective, and I was kind of wondering, what are the main customer segments you're really targeting with data orchestration hubs? And what would you say is their principal concern right now? So, Paul, that's probably one for you.
Yeah, so I think it's most of our the customers who we tend to engage with most tend to be global businesses. Sorry, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
No problems. It's really what are the main customer segments that you're targeting with data orchestration hubs?
Yeah.
So you were talking about global businesses, but you know, what sort of segments? Is that retail? Is that hospitality? Is that finance?
So I think we find that anybody that has a regulated requirement around meeting AML D5 or any under the any other regulations around protecting bank licenses, getting approvals for being able to provide e-money licenses, etc., are very much the focus of which we target. But we are seeing lots of businesses use us to do onboarding, understanding their customers, very much so. And we do have a huge focus on neobanks, cryptocurrency providers, FX, and all those sort of regulated / semi-regulated but risky online businesses.
So generally a lot of focus on finance from what you said, financial service providers, let's say.
Yeah, Paul, I think can you add anything to that, or did I get that right?
No, spot on. I think it's any business in it has a globalization strategy, or is it, you know, rolling out on a global scale, and that tends to be mostly with the fintech space, cryptocurrency, you know, iGaming, all the spaces that Brian mentioned there. You know, and they've all got a compliance requirements as well. So again, that's it. You know, the key value proposition for us is being able to satisfy that.
Right. And sorry, go ahead, Brian.
We also see a lot of companies who have existing kind of compliance strategies for the market they're already in, coming to us to reach out to see how they can expand their market into new markets, because we've got access to data in those markets and can help them scale up through automation, which they may have manual processes already.
Right. And it sounds from what you're saying as if that number one concern is how to get detailed customer knowledge, let's say, or data for new markets. Is that right? Is it new markets the main focus, or are they looking at something else right now?
New markets is one of the areas where we can assist people to grow, but we do a lot of work in very established markets.
Right. Okay.
I'll also say,
now,
go
ahead.
Alan, it's very much clients as well that want to change from that manual process to automate. So we'll work with anyone that wants to authenticate and regulate either an individual or business across any vertical in the payment space. But it can be entering in new markets, it can be replacing existing vendors, it can be someone, you know, primarily that wants to move away from a manual process to automation.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a good message, I think, across the board, moving from manual processes to automation. And I guess there's still a lot of very manual processes when you're getting into things like KYC. And I'm obviously familiar with KYC, but interesting that you guys mentioned KYB. So I kind of think, what are the main differences between KYC and KYB? Mm-hmm. And how is that reflected in the full stop offer?
Sure. So KYC, as you're probably all aware, is obviously know your customer, and that's centered around the individual. KYB is something that we call internally, and maybe everyone has a different abbreviation for that, but for us, that's know your business. So that's working with, for instance, an acquiring bank that goes out and wants to find out as much as they can about the business, about the merchant, and also ultimately who are the individuals behind that business.
Yeah,
so that's the difference for us.
Yeah, that's interesting. And would you say that's a kind of specialization then of the full stop offer, the ability to, I think you mentioned the silos as a key approach in KYB, but is that really where you have a lot of extra value to add in getting through those silos?
I think our proposition and our really trying to bring that all under one roof. As I say, rid the silos between maybe the KYC and the KYB business, but also if you're running let's just say you're running a KYB application, for instance, using our platform and our technology, you can, let's say, set a rule, for instance, on any shareholder over 25%. And so ultimately you're gonna find out who are the people behind that business within one system. So you're moving smoothly from KYB to KYC and vice versa, and the same with KYC if you're bringing that back to our anti-fraud technology. So what we're trying to do is enhance the process with one platform, and as I say, try and rid the silos within a business where people can log on to one system, and you have a large number of integrated data sources there. It kind of cuts down their manual work and their silos within the business. So just trying to make that process as smooth as possible.
I think I'll add a little bit to that, Christian, where we're around the silos, where we did notice as the company started that there was silos between, let's say, the payment fraud team, the KYC onboarding team for onboarding consumers, and people looking at the business onboarding. So the whole platform is designed to remove those silos, allowing you to, if you're onboarding a KYB, automatically run KYC on the ultimate beneficiaries, directors, or people involved in that business, but also on the KYB, also to understand the credit risk of the business, the structure of the business, the group structure, and even the web reputational risk of that business. And in the near future and going forward, is there opportunities to look at how does this company's payments profile look like? So there's lots of work and lots more data available, and removing those silos and connecting them under one platform is our mission.
Yeah, I certainly like that approach of the single API and the cross-functional visibility. I imagine that certainly on the financial services side, there's a lot of organizations which have a lot of kind of barriers and internal walls that need to be broken down to get real visibility. But just moving on from that, as far as I can see, fraud prevention is really about getting that balance right between preventing fraud or fraudulent attack versus eliminating false positives, making the customer experience very frictionful, or even causing customer insults. So, I guess for your customers, what is the biggest concern? Is it more protection, or is it the prevention of false positives and friction?
I think it's an even balance of both, really. We have lots of customers that are trying to make sure that they don't get exposed when they're going into a new market. So the question around, friction versus risk reduction, when they're going into a new market, often the risk reduction is the priority initially. And once they've proven that the risk reduction is working, that they start to maybe reduce the friction in the system. So going from maybe having all the checks done at the start to moving out to a progressive onboarding where they can afford to take an initial risk on an onboarding and do the KYC maybe at first point of payout or first deposit over €250, for example. So we see clients have different focuses depending on what their use case is: growing a business internally, or a new product into a new region. really depends on what the focus of that business is. And our systems allows you to build the workflows that enable you to meet those needs or meet the current demands of your business, but also to quickly and easily change them as your business need is changing.
Right. Okay. So you offer a lot of flexibility, it sounds, in that ability to, to configure the balance, let's say, between risk and customer experience. But just going on a little bit further on that multi-level approach, we have a question from Peter Okolo from Cloud Interactive Associates, and he's asking how do you ensure that multi-level verifications which mitigate false positives, account takeover, friendly fraud, don't limit the seamless onboarding process?
We can do this in a number of ways. We enable the ability to do progressive onboarding. So we have a context which you can provide, or you can build a workflow that will do all of the checks or do checks one after the other. So for example, you can enable a seamless onboarding or a low friction onboarding by having someone just provide in your registration page, provide their full name and email and capture their IP while they're doing it, provide that to us, and we can create a profile, onboard the user for you, but remain ready to, at that point, to maybe check them against a watch list, determine that their phone number and IP address are non-risky, or that there's no reputational damage associated with those known fraud risks associated with those parameters. You can then get someone into your system, try out your services in a limited way possibly. And then when they want to get more services, they want to, like, say, start making payments or start making a payout or, whatever service it might be. At that point, you can step up the authentication and request the identity documents or other checks you might want to do. So we can do the staged or progressive onboarding, as it's called in the industry.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for that, Brian. We have another question from Alex Morley at GlobePay Limited, and she's saying that she's currently training in anti-money laundering and is looking for some information on how Brexit will affect the KYC or AML process for SPIs and APIs. And I'm understanding here that SPIs are small payment institutes and APIs are alternative payment institutes. But Brian, do you want to have a go at that, or is that better for Christian or for Paul to address?
I think Christian or Paul can have a go at a question. Can have this one of you.
Yeah. Christian.
No, I was going to say for me, most regulations are global, and I can't see them changing. PSD2 or those type of regulations should be covered, whether it's Brexit or not. Coming back to silos, there might be some increased silos within your business if you're moving business out of the UK and moving it to Europe. But as for the regulations, I suppose it's a wait and see at the moment. I'm presuming no at the moment. But yeah, we haven't heard anything internally, and as I say, most regulations are region specific or global specific that are covered within our product. So yeah, I'm sticking to no at the minute, but it's definitely something that we'll keep an eye on.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds positive. Now, just time for one last question, I think, and this one again from Peter Okolo, asking about strategies to improve engagements and revenue retention via online betting. Anyone care to take a stab at that one?
Yeah, I think in terms of answering that question, I think that implementing the right controls at the beginning of the process, and so you're satisfying all the gaming regulators and the gaming regulations from a KYC perspective, but you're also getting better quality data on your customer, and then there's a number of different solutions that can be input following that as well, in terms of optimizing the customer's ability to pay in and pay out. So there's a raft of solutions specifically and processes specifically tailored to gaming to do that. And I think it's just a case of making sure that the customer gets through the process as easily as possible. And then once they're within the business, you can monitor things such as the transactional behavior. So that, you know, player behavior, transactional behavior, so that you're not limiting their ability to be able to interact with the business. And you know, then you're going to be able to gain better interaction with the customer as well.
Excellent.
I think also, if you look at our associations links, which we didn't really mention here today, but we have the ability to understand the links between different profiles, like email addresses, phone numbers, all that sort of stuff. They understand that X, Y, and Z person has come in there from a different device, different email. We've seen this person before. So you can use that in two ways. You can use it to fight fraud, or you can potentially use it to reward a VIP player or someone you know is linked to that VIP player. So if you've got a VIP player with a high score, you can potentially say, well, we've seen this person appears to be in the same address or appears from the same house. So you can score them that way as well, to say, we might give this person a higher initial play bonus, for example, because they're in the same house or with a VIP player. Now, that could also indicate fraud, so you need to be careful about that, but there is abilities to understand how people are connected in the platform.
Yeah, and I think you use strong biometric authentication as well. It gives the ability to implement that at pay in and pay out stage as well. So you're not damaging the player's ability to be able to put money in or take it out in a really smooth process.
Alan, this is Christian. We have 2 live questions, so I don't know if you want me to read them out and quickly answer them.
Well, I would say we're probably a little bit coming out of time for that, Christian. We're into
no problem
already. But what I would suggest is if we can, you know, get a response to those people who sent in the questions, then that would be fantastic. So I'd really like to thank Full Stop as the sponsor of this webinar. Obviously, a very big thanks to Paul, to Brian, and to Christian as the speakers. Thanks also to the team at MPE, Philip, Patricia, and the rest of the team. And just to remind everyone who joined us today that the webinar recording, along with a PDF of the presentation, will be made available tomorrow to anyone who's registered. And lastly, just like to thank you again for joining us, and to wish you a very nice rest of the day and good rest of the week. Thank you very much. Goodbye.